The Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense urges policymakers to learn from the COVID-19 pandemic and address critical gaps in the nation's biodefense. That needs to happen before we face the next infectious disease pandemic or biological attack. Asha George is the Executive Director for the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense. Asha, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So set the stage for us. What are the current bio risks that we're facing as an American public?
Well, we have three categories of risk. One has to do with naturally occurring disease, as you know, with COVID, pandemic influenza, any number of other infectious diseases, especially those that are emerging or are getting stronger. So if you look at COVID with the Delta and the Lambda variants, that sort of thing. Then we have accidentally released organisms, things that are coming out of laboratories, not necessarily the Wuhan laboratory, but even our own laboratories have accidentally released biological agents, things that they've been working with. And then lastly, we have the risk or the threat of biological weapons. Russia and North Korea now are stated by our State Department as having active biological weapons programs. Iran and China are very close behind. So we have three different areas in which we're having to address the threat.
Why do you think we were so unprepared for a global pandemic? I mean, we had one 100 years ago. It's not unheard of.
I think we just have experienced such great levels of health, especially here in the United States. And we just think that, well, you know, we can handle anything that comes our way. It's not going to be that big a deal. We know what to do when it comes to public health. We can just quickly get our arms around it, and that'll be the end of it. But it doesn't always work that way.
The Biden administration put out a new American Pandemic Preparedness Plan. What's in it? Does it go far enough?
Well, our commission put out a report on the Apollo program for biodefense, and that is just a big science and technology effort to address all pandemics and get them all off the table. Obviously with science and technology, but with research and other efforts to get us from here to there, similar to us going to the moon. The Biden administration paid attention to that very nicely, thank you, and pulled greatly from that into the pandemic preparedness plan. So what's there is a plan to take us from where we are now, sort of struggling with pandemics, not just the one, but a few, and get us to a point where we will be better prepared, where we will be able to quickly create medical countermeasures when we need them. We'll be able to identify what the diseases are that are coming our way, and we'll be able to get ahead of something, or at least be able to respond very quickly for the next time we have a pandemic. And that pandemic, whenever that occurs, is not going to be in another 100 years.
And so in the plan currently, do you feel like it goes far enough? Now, are we prepared?
I don't think we're prepared right now. I think we're in the unfortunate position right now of having to respond to and recover from a pandemic at the same time as we're still trying to prepare for the next pandemic that's coming by. There's more to be done.
So I want to ask you about leadership. Where do you think the leadership for the nation's biodefense should be in the federal government? Should it be at one of the agencies? Should it be at the White House?
It needs to be at the White House, and there's a reason. We have a tendency to say, well, this is a health issue, and it has to do with human health, so let's leave it at the Department of Health and Human Services. Or if we're talking about an animal or plant issue, we would say the same thing with USDA. But when it comes to biodefense, when it comes to preparedness and responding, it's multiple agencies that are involved. So if you have every single cabinet level department and many independent agencies involved, you can't have one department like HHS trying to tell the other departments what to do. You have to have the White House in charge. But the person there has to be high level enough for all the other cabinet level agencies to actually pay attention to. A low level White House staffer isn't going to get it done.
So high enough level meaning what?
A high enough level, we have called for the vice president to be in charge, but if not the vice president, then it needs to be a deputy national security advisor, someone at that level who commands the respect and attention of the cabinet and the independent agencies, and has the power and wherewithal to go in to see the president and see the national security advisor and say, hey, this isn't working out.
Well,
this is what we need.
You said multiple agencies. So how do you handle all the coordination that would be necessary among all those agencies?
Well, you need a strategy, right? You absolutely need a plan. We called for a national biodefense strategy back in our first report in 2015. Congress agreed. President Obama signed off on that. The Trump administration actually produced it. Now it's up to this administration to take it and implement it. That implementation plan was thin to begin with, and so I think they're working on beefing it up right now. But that's what it's going to take. There are too many departments and too many things that need to get done for us to just sort of roll forward without a plan. We need a really clear and specific plan.
All right, well, Asha, we're going to take a quick pause right here, and then we'll continue. Asha, one bio threat is bioterrorism, where an agent is intentionally released. Does the intelligence community of the United States have the focus and the resources to address bioterrorism?
I think they have the focus. They have to have the focus because both Al-Qaeda and the Taliban have said very clearly, very obviously, and very publicly that they're interested in getting their hands on biological agents for the purpose of bioterrorism. So they have to be on top of it, just the way they are on top of those organizations in general. In terms of resources, though, I don't think they have enough resources. And part of those resources has to do with the wide variety of threats that they're trying to address. But listen, you know, with everything that's happened with COVID and some people's suspicion that that disease was released possibly intentionally or maybe accidentally, it's clear that the intelligence community has to be much more involved. But you can't just ask them to turn on a dime. They need a greater budget for it, and they need more people for it.
You mentioned the Taliban, and they have mentioned that they are interested in biological weapons. They have territory now, so that they can create and they can run labs.
Correct.
What are we supposed to do about that?
Well, first of all, I think we need to pay more attention to what exactly they are doing and understand what it takes to create a biological weapon or to at least weaponize it enough to conduct bioterrorism. You're absolutely right. When it comes to creating weapons, you need land, you need labs, you need buildings, you need power, you need water, you need all of those things, plus some scientists. And now the Taliban has all of that again. So it's incredibly important to pay attention and be putting all those pieces together. But the thing is, they also need additional resources. Afghanistan is just not replete with all of the things that you need for a biological weapon. So we have to be paying attention, or they need to be paying attention to what's happening with the supply chain, both the legal supply chain and the illegal or black market supply chain.
Of the things that could be coming into the country.
Resources, yes.
I want to ask you about vaccine research because, you know, Operation Warp Speed gave us a vaccine for COVID incredibly fast. Is there a way to institutionalize vaccine research so that next time we need one quickly, we can have that, you know, that it can be done fast and easily?
I think there are two ways, yes, that could happen or that should happen. One is that we have to decide that we're going to need vaccines very, very quickly. Instead of assuming that, well, you know, we'll see a disease and we've got years and years and decades to develop something.
Or that COVID thing was just an aberration. That'll never happen again.
We can't say that again. We had SARS, we had MERS, and now we have COVID. So we should be over that by now. So that's one thing. We have to decide that we need that capability. And the other thing is we have to institutionalize that somewhere. We can't just hope that somewhere in HHS somebody will decide that, okay, we should do this. That's too weak. We need to put the pin on somebody specifically and say, this is your responsibility, it's going to be your responsibility forever, put it in your budget, Congress, you fund it, and then they can continue on.
Do you think there's a way to have vaccines ahead of time, or do you just have to wait until you see what the disease is, what's it made out of, and then create the vaccine?
I don't know that you can have a vaccine ahead of time for every possible disease that's out there or that could be genetically modified to be created. You know, I don't think you can do that. But what you can do is you can look at the families of viruses and the families of bacteria that are out there, well, viruses, I guess, in this case, and you can say, all right, we're going to pick one representative sample of this vaccine or virus family, and then create the vaccine for that. That way, when the thing comes along that falls into that family, you can say, okay, we've already come this far. Now we just need to modify this vaccine or build on what we've already gotten. And it's possible that that vaccine that was made for, you know, a sister or brother of whatever we're worried about, that might be the thing we can go ahead and start issuing to people, and it would provide some
in the
partial
meantime
immunity. Yes.
Okay, and you had said that, you know, it's not going to be another 100 years until we get the next global pandemic. Mm-hmm. Can you give us 50 years maybe? Like how often are we looking at these things?
Well, I think the truth is we're dealing with a new pandemic now. It kind of depends on how you look at it, right? Either it's the old pandemic that's still with us, or it's a new one. I think we're talking about needing to prepare for pandemics as if they're going to occur on an annual basis. I know it's hard. I know we don't want to do that, but it is the nature of viruses to be circulating throughout the world and taking advantage of our weaknesses to proliferate. So we're weak now, and we should be expecting it.
So finally, Asha, I want to ask you about the emerging biothreats. Mm-hmm. What are the things that have not happened yet that we should be aware of?
Well, we always need to be worried about pandemic influenza, you know that. We didn't really have much of a pandemic last year. We have one every year, it's just that sometimes it's really harmful to us and sometimes it's not. I think last year we didn't have that issue because COVID was sort of dominating, you know, our bodies, and the pandemic flu could not get through. That's one. That's always one. I think also we have to be looking at other coronaviruses, and we have to be looking at those viruses that we sometimes get sick with, but not always. I'm particularly concerned about viruses like Ebola, where they just blast through the body. Right now, Ebola is an unsuccessful virus in that it blasts through the body and it kills the host. Once it figures out how to mutate such that it doesn't kill the host, or at least not this badly, suddenly it's an incredibly infectious disease, and it's horrible, as you know. And if that spreads throughout the world, we're screwed. We have not been able to get it under control in Africa. We have not. And that is a real red light indicator that it could be coming.
Okay, well, thanks for that upbeat message at the end.
Sorry.
Asha, thank you so much. This has been fascinating.
Thank you.